3 weeks ago, I opened my eyes in a hospital room and realized something was terribly wrong. I could hear the steady beeping of machines. I could feel the weight of a tube in my throat. I could sense people moving around me, but I could not speak. I could not lift a finger. I could not even turn my head. I was fully awake inside a body that would not respond. At first, I thought this was simply part of recovery. Maybe the doctors had given me medication. Maybe the paralysis was temporary. But then the door to my room opened and I heard footsteps I knew by heart. My husband, Evan Carter, the man I trusted for 10 years, the man I believed would never hurt me. He walked to my bedside, sighed softly, and said something that froze my entire world. Maybe it is better if she does not wake up. Maybe letting her go is the kindest option. I wanted to scream. I wanted to move. I wanted to beg him to explain. But I lay there in absolute stillness, listening as my husband stood over my motionless body and quietly wished for my death. That was the moment I knew my nightmare had only begun. Before that day in the hospital, if anyone had asked me about my life, I would have told them it was steady and warm, the kind of ordinary happiness people take for granted. I had been married Evan Carter for 10 years. He was 38, confident, sharp, and successful in ways that made our friends admire him. Evan worked in commercial real estate, a field that demanded long hours and sharp instincts. He thrived in it. We lived in a cozy craftsman-style home in the Queen Anne neighborhood of Seattle, surrounded by maple trees and quiet streets. It was the sort of place where neighbors waved and children rode bikes down the block. On weekends we drank coffee on our porch and planned future trips to Napa Valley, Colorado, maybe even Europe one day. For a long time I truly believed we were building a life that would last. I taught English at a public high school, a job I cared about more than I realized. My students were loud, unpredictable, and endlessly surprising. Evan liked hearing the funny stories from my classes, and I liked hearing about the projects he was managing. We filled our evenings with simple routines, shared meals, and Friday night takeout. We had talked about starting a family once I felt ready. Everything shifted the moment Evan hired a new assistant. Her name was Brooke Adams. She was 27, bright, organized, and always dressed like she was on her way to a magazine shoot. Evan mentioned her casually at first. Brooke handled this contract. Brooke reorganized that client file. Brooke saved them a fortune on a project that almost fell apart. I did not think much of it in the beginning. A good assistant can make or break an entire office. But as the weeks turned into months, her name started appearing in more of our conversations than I expected. Evan stayed later at work. He made more weekend trips. He seemed tired, distracted, glued to his phone. Looking back, the signs were all there. But when you love someone, you convince yourself the cracks you see are nothing more than shadows. You tell yourself everything is fine even when something deep inside whispers otherwise. The changes were subtle at first, the kind you brush aside because acknowledging them feels too heavy. Evan started carrying 2 phones, claiming one was for work emergencies. He would step out onto the porch to take calls, speaking in low tones that drifted back into the house like distant echoes I was never meant to hear. Our Friday night dinners slowly disappeared. At first it was 1 cancellation, then 2, then half a dozen. Every time he had a reason that sounded reasonable enough, a late meeting, a sudden client crisis, a deadline he had to meet. I listened, nodded, and told myself marriage required patience. I told myself stress could change a person temporarily. But the truth lingered, growing louder week by week. When I surprised him with lunch at his office, Brooke was already sitting beside him, laughing at something on his screen. They were close. Much too close. She stood up quickly when she saw me, brushing a hand down her perfect blouse, as if erasing evidence of something I was not supposed to see. Another time I walked into his home office to find him smiling at his phone the way he used to smile at me. When he noticed me, he locked the screen so fast the motion felt like a reflex he had practiced. My sister noticed it before I did. During a family dinner, she leaned in and whispered, "Are you sure everything is okay between you two? He seems different." Different. A simple word that captured everything I refused to admit. Still, I tried to believe in us. I reminded myself of the man I married, the one who held my hand at airports and danced with me barefoot in our kitchen. I clung to those memories, hoping they meant something, hoping they could outweigh the uneasy silence that had settled between us. But the distance grew. The more he pulled away, the more I felt myself slipping into a place I did not recognize, a place filled with quiet suspicion and the fear that I was losing someone without understanding why. And then came the night that would change everything. It was a rainy Thursday in early March, the kind of Seattle rain that falls in sheets and blurs the entire world into streaks of gray. I had stayed late at school for parent-teacher conferences. By the time I packed my bag and walked to my car, the parking lot was nearly empty and the streetlights were glowing like hazy halos through the mist. I remember sitting behind the wheel, taking a long breath, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling that had followed me for weeks. I kept thinking about Evan, about the way he avoided my eyes, about the way he always seemed halfway out the door, even when he was home. I told myself I would talk to him that night. I told myself we needed certainty, answers, anything to stop the growing silence between us. I pulled onto the highway, driving carefully as the rain hammered against the windshield. I had taken that route thousands of times. It felt familiar, predictable. I was going 55 miles per hour, both hands on the wheel, focused on the road. Then the traffic ahead of me slowed. I pressed the brake. Nothing happened. I pressed harder. Still nothing. My heart slammed into my ribs. A cold shock shot through my body. I pumped the pedal again, desperate, terrified, but the car did not respond. It was like the brakes had vanished beneath my feet. The red glow of a truck's taillights flashed ahead of me. I yanked the wheel to the right, trying to reach the shoulder. The rain made the roads slick as glass. The tires lost traction. The car spun violently, the world tilting and twisting as I screamed into the empty night. Metal collided with concrete. The airbag exploded against my face. My head snapped back. There was a hollow, crushing sound as the driver's side crumpled inward. Then everything went black, like someone had cut the cord holding me to the world. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed surrounded by machines, tubes, monitors. The steady hum of medical equipment filled the room. I tried to lift my hand. Nothing. I tried to open my mouth. Nothing. I tried to scream. Nothing. Terror poured through me like ice water. I could hear. I could think. I could feel. But I was trapped in a body that refused to move. The doctors believed I was unresponsive. But I was awake. Awake for every moment that was about to come. The first few days in the hospital blurred together. Doctors spoke over me, nurses adjusted machines, and family members whispered about my chances. Every voice was clear. Every word reached me. But no one knew I was listening. No one knew I was fighting inside a body that refused to obey a single command. I kept hoping Evan would come rushing in, devastated, desperate, terrified of losing me. I imagined him holding my hand, whispering that everything would be okay. I waited for the man I used to know, the one who kissed my forehead every morning without fail. He did visit, but not the way I expected. One afternoon, the door opened and I heard two sets of footsteps. Evan's voice came first, low and tense. A woman answered him, her tone sharp, impatient. It took only a second for me to recognize it. Brooke. I froze inside my mind. Why was she here? Why was she with him? They stood at the end of my bed, speaking as if I were a silent object in the room. Brooke sighed. She said something that felt like a knife slipping between my ribs. How much longer until the doctors let you make a decision? Evan exhaled heavily. The kind of exhale people make when something has become an inconvenience. 2, maybe 3 weeks. They said if she does not show improvement, I will have to consider her quality of life. Her quality of life. The phrase echoed through my mind. I wanted to scream until the walls cracked. Brooke stepped closer, her heels tapping on the floor. I felt her presence near my shoulder. She whispered something I was never meant to hear. We could have the insurance money by summer. Insurance money. My lungs tightened around the tube in my throat. My pulse hammered so loudly I thought the monitor would catch it. Evan did not deny it. He did not sound shocked. He simply said, "We need to be patient." Then Brooke asked the question that shattered the last piece of my reality. "Did you do something to her car, Evan? The brakes, I mean. Or was the accident just luck?" He went silent for a long moment. Then he answered. A quiet, cold confession that made my entire world collapse. And I lay there, unable to move, unable to speak, forced to listen to the man I loved reveal the truth. He had not been waiting for me to recover. He had been waiting for me to die. The room felt colder after Evan's confession, as if every ounce of warmth had been sucked out of the air. I listened, frozen in a body that refused to react, while the man I had built a life with explained my death as if it were an item on his to-do list. Brooke crossed her arms, her tone almost annoyed. You said you loosened the brake lines, so why did she survive? Evan's reply was flat, almost irritated. I did what I could. The weather was supposed to take care of the rest. She was not supposed to be driving that fast. The rain, the empty highway, the sudden failure of the brakes, it all made sense now. My accident had not been a tragic twist of fate. It had been engineered, planned, executed by the one person I trusted more than anyone else. Brooke moved around the room, inspecting my things the way someone browses merchandises. I heard her pick up my necklace, the one Evan gave me for our 5th anniversary. She laughed softly. I guess I do not need to feel guilty wearing this now. Every word felt like glass scraping across my skin. Evan lowered his voice. Keep your voice down. Nurses walk in and out. Brooke scoffed. What are they going to do? She cannot hear us. She cannot do anything. But I could hear. I could feel. I could remember every word. I felt a tear slide from the corner of my eye, slow and hot. Brooke noticed nothing. Evan noticed even less. They simply walked out, leaving me drowning in a truth more devastating than the accident itself. My body was broken, but my heart broke first. For days after Evan and Brooke's visit, I lay in a silence that felt heavier than the machines surrounding me. I replayed their words over and over, each memory cutting deeper than the last. I wanted to fight. I wanted to scream my truth. But all I had was stillness. All I had was time. Then, one morning, something changed. A nurse I had not seen before walked into my room. She moved with a soft confidence, humming under her breath as she adjusted my IV line. Her name badge caught my attention. Hannah Lopez, early 30s, warm eyes, a quiet steadiness in her voice. She wiped my forehead gently and paused. I could feel her looking at me, really looking at me, not through me the way most people did. Your tears are fresh, she whispered. That is not normal for someone who is unresponsive. My heart kicked inside my chest, she noticed. Hannah leaned closer, studying my face with a focus that made hope spark in my mind for the first time since the accident. If you can hear me, try to do something small, blink, or move your eyes, anything. I gathered every ounce of strength inside me, pushed against the weight of my uncooperative body, and focused on one tiny movement. My eyelid trembled, just once, barely a flutter, but it was enough. Hannah gasped softly. Her voice rose, filled with a cautious excitement. Lauren, do that again if you can hear me. I tried. I blinked, slow but deliberate. Her breath caught. She squeezed my hand, gentle but firm. Oh my God, you are in there. Those 4 words cracked open a door I thought had been permanently sealed. For the first time since the accident, someone saw me. Someone believed me. Someone reached into the darkness and pulled me toward the light. Hannah leaned close and whispered the promise that would change everything. I am not going to leave you like this. We are going to figure out a way to communicate. And with that, hope returned. Hannah returned later that afternoon with a calm determination in her step. She closed the door gently behind her, pulled a small chair to my bedside, and sat down as if we were about to have an ordinary conversation. But nothing about this moment was ordinary. I brought something for us, she said softly. It might help. She lifted a small laminated sheet. On it was the alphabet arranged in clear rows. Simple, basic, but to me, it looked like a lifeline. Here is the plan, she explained. I will point to each letter. If the letter is part of what you want to say, blink once. If not, I will keep going. We will take our time. No pressure. I blinked once to show I understood. The process was slow at first. Painfully slow. Each row felt like a marathon. But Hannah never rushed me. She never looked impatient or discouraged. She waited through every pause, every tremble, every tiny victory. Letter by letter, blink by blink, we built our first full word. DANGER? When Hannah read it aloud, her expression changed. Her eyes widened with a mixture of concern and disbelief. But she did not question me. She went right back to the board. Next word. HUSBAND? Her breath caught. She swallowed hard, whispering, Lauren, what happened? I blinked again, urging her to continue. BRAKES. Hannah's face went pale. She sat back for a moment, processing the weight of what I had spelled out. Then she leaned forward, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Okay, listen to me, I believe you, and I am going to help you, but we need proof. She glanced toward the door, then back at me. We are going to catch him. Quietly, safely, and we will make sure no one ever hurts you again. For the first time, revenge stopped being a distant dream. It became a plan. The next morning, Hannah entered my room with a quiet purpose. Her movements were controlled, careful, the way someone walks when they know they are stepping into dangerous territory. She checked my IV, adjusted my blanket, doing everything exactly as any other nurse would. But when she leaned in to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, she whispered so softly I almost thought I imagined it. I brought something. She slipped a small object from her pocket and placed it behind the vase of flowers on my bedside table. I could not see it, but the faint click that followed told me everything. Her phone, recording. She met my eyes. Just blink if you understand. I blinked once. Relief softened her expression. Now we wait, she murmured. It did not take long. That afternoon the door opened again, and the familiar chill of Evan's presence moved through the room. Brooke was with him, her perfume announcing her arrival before she even spoke. They believed the room was empty of witnesses. They believed I was gone in every way except physically. They were wrong. Brooke leaned over my bed, her tone clipped. The doctor's still saying the same thing? Evan sighed. They think she is not improving. Hughes said, if nothing changes in 2 weeks, I should consider ending support. Brooke huffed, as if waiting for your wife to die was an inconvenience. This would be easier if the breaks had actually done what they were supposed to. Evan lowered his voice, annoyed. I told you already. I loosened the lines. A mechanic probably would not even notice unless he tore the whole thing apart. The storm was supposed to finish it. Hearing him say it again, so casually, so coldly, made something inside me crack. But the fear that once paralyzed me was fading, replaced by something sharper. Resolve. Brooke moved across the room, picking up my water cup, tapping it against her nails. And what about the insurance? You talked to the agent, right? Evan replied, it will pay out. We just need her gone first. My pulse raced. The machine beside me began beeping faster. Evan barely noticed. Brooke did not care. They walked out minutes later, still planning a future built on my death. When the door closed, Hannah emerged from behind the curtain, her face tight with shock and anger. She reached for the phone, stopping the recording. Her voice shook, but her determination did not. This is enough to start something. Not everything yet, but enough. She stepped closer, squeezing my hand. We are going to bring him down, Lauren. I promise you. For the first time since the accident, I felt something powerful take root inside me. Justice, and the beginning of revenge. 2 days later, Hannah came in earlier than usual, her hair still damp from the rain outside. She closed the door behind her and pulled the blinds just enough to give us privacy without drawing suspicion. Her expression told me everything before she even spoke. I talked to someone, she whispered, someone who can actually do something. She stepped aside and a man in a white coat entered, Dr. Adam Hughes, the neurologist I had seen many times but never truly been able to communicate with. He walked to the foot of my bed, studying the monitor, then looking directly at me. Hannah told me what she discovered. I want to run a few tests. If you can respond, even in small ways, I will document everything. My heart raced. This was it, a chance to prove I was conscious. He held up 2 fingers. If you can see this, blink once. I blinked. If you understand me, blink twice. I blinked twice, slow and deliberate. His eyes widened. He stepped closer, voice hushed but firm. She is fully aware. It was the first time someone besides Hannah truly understood. Dr. Hughes performed a series of cognitive tests, all adapted for my limited movement. Each successful blink, each deliberate eye shift, strengthened the medical record that would protect me from Evan's decision about life support. When the tests were done, he turned to Hannah. We need to involve law enforcement, carefully. The next morning, Detective Laura Kingston arrived disguised as a hospital administrator. She stood beside my bed, listening as Hannah explained everything. Then she spoke to me gently. Lauren, if you can confirm your husband tampered with your vehicle, blink once. I blinked. If you believe he intends to harm you again, blink once more. I did. Her jaw tightened. That was enough. They formed a plan right there in the room. Detective Kingston would bring in a forensic mechanic to examine my car. Dr. Hughes would update my chart, listing me as responsive and cognitively present. Hannah would stay close, watching for any sign that Evan suspected something. And then came the final piece. Tomorrow morning, Dr. Hughes would call Evan in for a meeting about end-of-life decisions. Evan would believe he was being given permission to disconnect me from life support. Instead, he would walk directly into a room full of evidence and waiting officers. As they finalized the details, a calm certainty settled over me. Evan had tried to take my life. Now he was going to lose his own in the only way that mattered: his freedom. The next morning arrived with a heaviness that felt different from the days before. The hallway outside my room seemed quieter. The nurses moved with a strange mixture of routine and tension, as if everyone sensed something was about to shift. Hannah came in first, giving my hand the smallest squeeze. "Today is the day," she whispered. A few hours later, Evan walked into the hospital. I could hear his familiar footsteps approaching long before he opened the door. He entered with the same detached calm he always had lately, as if visiting his wife in a coma was simply another errand to cross off his list. He sat beside me and sighed dramatically. "Lauren, I hope you find peace soon." The words tasted like poison in my mind. Minutes later, Dr. Hughes stepped into the room. "Evan, could you join me for a private discussion about your wife's condition?" Evan stood, his voice steady. "Of course." They led him to a consultation room down the hall. I could not see inside, but I could hear faint echoes of conversation. Then the tone shifted. Footsteps, a chair scraping. Another voice entered the room, steady, firm, unmistakably authoritative. "Detective Laura Kingston." "Evan Carter, I need you to stay seated. We have a few questions regarding your wife's accident." Evan tried to sound confused. "I do not understand. This was a tragic crash. Why is this?" Detective Kingston cut him off. "Your wife's car has been examined by a forensic specialist. The brake lines were deliberately loosened." Silence, heavy, tense. Then she continued. "We also have recordings of you discussing the sabotage and your intentions to end your wife's life support for the insurance payout." Evan's voice cracked. "That is impossible. She could not have known anything. She cannot even hear you." At that moment, Dr. Hughes spoke, calm but firm. "She can hear everything, Evan. She has been conscious. She has been responding. And she remembers every word you said at her bedside." The pause that followed felt like the entire world holding its breath. When Evan finally spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. She is awake?" Detective Kingston answered with a finality that echoed like a gavel. "Awake, aware, and alive, unlike what you planned." There was a scuffle, chairs shifting, Evan standing quickly, footsteps stumbling, then the sharp, metallic click of handcuffs. "Evan Carter, you are under arrest for attempted murder, insurance fraud, and endangerment." Hearing those words was like breaking through to the surface after drowning for weeks. Hannah stepped back into my room minutes later, tears gathering in her eyes as she whispered, "It is over, Lauren. You are safe now." For the first time since the night of the accident, I felt something deep inside me unclench. Evan had fallen, and I was still here. After Evan's arrest, the world around me did not magically become easier. But for the first time, the fear that had wrapped itself around my throat began to loosen. The doctors adjusted my treatment plan immediately. Now that they knew I was conscious and fighting inside my own body, everything changed. I was transferred to a specialized rehabilitation center 2 weeks later. The first goal was simple on paper, impossible in reality. Move one finger. It took me 9 days. 9 days of frustration, tears, exhaustion, and the kind of determination I never knew I possessed. When my right index finger finally twitched, Hannah, who visited every evening after her shift, burst into tears and laughed at the same time. "You are coming back," she whispered. "I knew you would." From there, progress continued in tiny increments: a finger, a toe, a slight shift of my wrist. My first intentional breath without the ventilator. Each milestone felt like a mountain climbed. 3 months after the accident, I spoke my first word. Hannah leaned over me during speech therapy and said, "Try something small. Maybe your name." I gathered every bit of strength inside me and forced the sound out, ragged and barely audible. "Lauren." Her hands flew to her mouth. The therapist wiped tears from his eyes, and I lay there exhausted and shaking, but triumphant. By the time the trial began, I could sit in a wheelchair and speak in short sentences. The prosecutors requested a recorded statement. I insisted on speaking for myself. When the camera light turned red, I told them everything. Every word, every betrayal, every moment trapped inside my own body while Evan and Brooke planned my death inches away from me. The jury needed less than a day. Evan was convicted of attempted murder, aggravated assault, and insurance fraud. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole only after 30 years. Brooke accepted a plea deal. Walking out of that courtroom in my wheelchair, I felt sunlight on my face and realized something. Survival was my first victory. Rebuilding would be my second. Recovery did not end with the trial. If anything, it demanded more strength, more patience, and more faith than the months before. Every morning started with physical therapy, slow stretches, and painful exercises as my muscles remembered how to move. Some days I made progress. Some days I cried in frustration, but I kept going. 6 months after the trial, I took my first steps with a walker. 7 months later, I walked across my living room with only a cane. Hannah was there that day, clapping like I had just run a marathon. In a way, I had. I sold the house Evan and I once shared. I could not walk through those rooms without feeling ghosts of conversations and the weight of everything he tried to take from me. Instead, I bought a small townhouse near the school where I used to teach. It was warm, bright, and peaceful in a way my old life had forgotten how to be. Returning to my classroom was emotional. My students cheered when they saw me walk in. Some cried. I held onto the podium for balance and told them the truth that healing is rarely linear, that strength looks different on everyone, and that sometimes surviving something dark teaches you more than 1,000 easy days ever could. As for Hannah, she became the closest thing to family I had. We celebrated milestones together, birthdays, holidays, victories big and small. She told me once that helping me reminded her why she became a nurse. I told her she saved my life before the doctors ever knew I was alive. And in a quiet, gentle way, something else surprised me. I began to feel open to love again. Not quickly, not recklessly, but slowly, like a sunrise creeping across a quiet sky. It was proof that even after everything, my heart had not been ruined. It had only been rewired. I survived. And I was learning how to live again. 2 years after the accident, I finally understood something I could not see when my world first collapsed. Healing is not about returning to who you were. It is about becoming someone stronger, clearer, and more honest with yourself than ever before. I no longer tried to explain away red flags. I no longer ignored my intuition. I no longer believed that love meant sacrificing my own safety or silence. Surviving what Evan did to me changed the map of my life, but it also sharpened my vision for what I deserved. I learned that the people who truly see you will fight for you even when you cannot fight for yourself. Hannah taught me that. Dr. Hughes taught me that. Even my students, who sent me hand-drawn cards while I recovered, reminded me that connection can be an anchor. I learned that justice does not erase pain, but it creates space for peace to grow. I learned that starting over is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of courage. And most importantly, I learned that living well is the purest form of revenge, not anger, not bitterness, but reclaiming your joy, your autonomy, and the pieces of yourself someone tried to destroy. When I share my story, I do it for anyone who has felt unheard, anyone who has been trapped in a situation where their voice was stolen or dismissed, anyone who has been betrayed by someone they trusted. You matter, your voice matters, your story matters. If this journey resonates with you, please like, share, and comment where you are watching from. Your support helps these stories reach others who need strength, clarity, or hope. This is Lauren Mitchell. And this is the life I rebuilt from the ashes someone else tried to bury me in. As I sit here today, typing these words with hands that once refused to move, I think about the version of myself who lay trapped in that hospital bed, the woman who could hear everything yet say nothing, the woman who listened to her husband plan her death while pretending to mourn her. I wish I could reach back in time and tell her one thing. You will rise. Not quickly, not easily, but you will. Life after trauma is not a straight line. Some mornings I still wake up sweating, hearing echoes of Evan's voice in my mind. Some nights I still dream of the darkness I could not escape. Healing isn't pretty. It isn't polished, but it is possible, and that is enough. Today I have something Evan could never take from me, a future filled with quiet mornings, warm friendships, and laughter that doesn't feel borrowed. A future where I walk at my own pace, love at my own pace, and trust myself more fiercely than ever. A future that is mine. To anyone listening who has been hurt, dismissed, betrayed, or pushed into silence, I want you to hear me clearly. You are stronger than you think. You deserve safety. You deserve love that doesn't come with conditions or cruelty. And you deserve to choose yourself even when someone else tries to erase you. Thank you for watching my story. If it touched you in any way, please like this video, share it with someone who might need strength today, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read every single one. This is Lauren Mitchell, and I'm still here. Still breathing. Still fighting. Still